Happy Friday, Packer fans. I'm Uriah Chapek, host of Monologue Packers podcast. Thank you again for tuning in to another episode on this glorious Friday, day after a Packers victory. It might be a preseason victory, but it's still a victory nonetheless. So I'm here to break down the Week 1 matchup against the Green Bay Packers and the Houston Texans. It is time to pour ourselves another Packers podcast. So as always, before we get started, I have to thank all of you again for tuning in and checking out the episode. Thank you to all my returning subscribers and fans of the Pour Another Packers podcast. The vinyl, the tapestry, not a tapestry, what is this thing called? This is called a, the canvas is still here. I am rocking this. This is my third video officially with the canvas in the background. Remember, if you are new to this channel, subscribe. My first, as soon as I hit 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to give this bad boy away to one lucky subscriber, and then I am going to update this a little bit, maybe get something a little bit smaller, something that's less pixelated. Whoever wins this, you're going to see that this thing's very pixelated, but I'll autograph it. You can hang it up in your Packer man cave, whatever you want to do with it. But let's talk about some Packers news. Let's talk about some Packers football. So to start out, 26 players did not dress for the game. This is not a huge surprise for that Week 1 matchup, or that first preseason game matchup heading into just against the Houston Texans. So essentially, all of your key starters were missing or absent, did not suit up for the game. I'm not going to list off all of them, but of course you have Rodgers, Graham, Mercedes Lewis. You have 3 offensive linemen in Turner, Bakhtiar, and Bulaga. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you have both the Smiths, Amos, Alexander, Jones, Williams, Martinez, Lowry, Clark. They didn't play. They didn't need them to play. Apparently, LaFleur, obviously with the lack of tackling, which I am really getting ahead of myself in this video on that topic, but he doesn't want to risk any sense of injuries heading into the actual regular season. These guys got plenty of workout in the last couple days against the Houston Texans in practice, so he sat these guys out. But let's talk about some of our highlights. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball, because typically I always talk about the defense right away, because they are the glowing star of the Packers' 2019 Super Bowl hopes. But we're going to start with the offensive side, talk about some of the highlights, things that stood out to me. I hope that you guys actually got a chance to catch the game. And I should preface before I get started that I missed the whole first half of the game. I didn't get home until about 4 or 5 minutes into the third quarter. I have a day job. I gotta go to work. I gotta put the bread on the table. And not that my wife's gonna cook it, but I'm gonna put some bread on the table, and then I'm gonna eat it. I'm gonna make myself a peanut butter jelly sandwich. It's gonna be fantastic. So to start off, Dexter Williams, 14 carries for 62 yards. He averaged 4.4 yards per carry, so that is a respectable time, or a respectable statistic to throw out there. He did have one catch for 18 yards off of a screen pass on their second drive in the second quarter. So Dexter Williams, he was fed the ball a lot last night against the Houston Texans, and I think he had a great showing, especially with both Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams out. It made sense for him to just kind of step up and take the bulk of the workload, and I think he did an excellent job. Moving on, Jake Kumaro, only 2 receptions off of 2 targets. He did have 27 yards total. His biggest gain was a 16-yard pass from Kaiser in the first quarter. You have Darius Shepard. He had that one lone catch for that beautiful, absolutely beautiful 14-yard touchdown from Kaiser. And then also the same thing goes for Alan Lazard. That is a new name to this podcast. That is not a name I was familiar with heading into the preseason, so shame on me. But he also had one lone catch for 27-yard touchdown from Tim Boyle, which took place in the third quarter. And then we have to talk about a little bit of tight end groups, because obviously both Jimmy Graham and Lewis were out. You had Sternberger on the injury list because of that nasty hit on Monday, so they're just kind of taking it easy on him. So Robert Tonyan also had a beautiful 27-yard reception in the second quarter. So our receivers have been looking rather good. I like what we have at depth, especially when you talk about, the bigger names on our receiving core not playing in that first preseason game. You have to like that some of these other guys did step up. They had some great catches. They did differentiate themselves. But the person who did not differentiate himself is Jamon Moore. Now, he had a disappointing showing, for lack of a better term. He caught 2 passes off of 4 targets. He had a grand total of 7 yards, so he did end up dropping 2 passes. And that one catch that he had for a 1-yard touchdown at the beginning of the third quarter wasn't even that great of a catch, in my opinion. He was bobbling it. If he was closer to the sideline, it probably would have been ruled an incomplete pass. And I think the clock is ticking for him to step up and show that he can be a NFL receiver. It's really hard for me to support Jamon Moore, and this one is difficult. I'm not completely on the mindset of get rid of Jamon and move on. I don't think that he is for sure a cuttable wide receiver, although I would not be disappointed. I would not be surprised if that happened. But the main reason I feel that way is because it wasn't too long ago that Davante Adams was struggling catching the ball. And I was on the mindset of get rid of Adams, but he turned it around. He became one hell of a receiver. He's obviously the best receiver on our team and one of the best receivers in the NFL. Who knows if that ends up being Jamon Moore? Maybe we will say the same thing 3 years from now. But as where things stand right now, he needs to definitely step up and contribute on that receiving core. He's bye Felicia. I think I said that last video. Before we talk about the defense though, let's talk about these quarterbacks, right? That was one of those things that I did want to watch. That was one of my highlights of things to watch heading into the Houston Texans game. So Deshaun Kaiser played the entire first half. He went 8 for 13, 102 yards, 1 touchdown. He did have 0 interceptions, so those are good stats. They're not great, but they are good stats. Tim Boyle, on the other hand, he played the entire third quarter, a little bit of the fourth quarter as well. He went only 3 for 5, so he got 5 pass attempts off. 40 yards total, 2 touchdowns in those 3 passes, so that's pretty awesome. Also 0 interceptions, but my overall thoughts on this, like I said, Kaiser wasn't great. He wasn't bad either. But you really want to see more out of your quarterback too, to go out there against those second and third string defenses. He did protect the ball. He didn't throw anything away, but I would have liked to see more from that. And I would have also liked to see more playing time for Tim Boyle. And I would not be surprised. Now, granted, Rodgers will probably start and get a couple series in the next week's game against Baltimore, but I would not be surprised if they play Tim Boyle a little bit more. Maybe they swap roles and see how he does as that QB2 and move Kaiser down to that QB3. That's something I would love to see. Whether Matt LaFleur does it or not is completely those are thoughts and ideas that only stay on Lombardi Avenue. I do not get that sort of insight. Boyle struggled to get the ball to the end zone as far as his performance in last night's game, and I think that was rather evident. So it took him 7 times to get into the end zone. It came off of an interception early on in that third quarter. It got the ball down to the 3-yard line, and they went 4 and out. Luckily, got one hell of a break by getting a penalty on that 4th down play where they could not convert on it. And then only 3 plays after that was he able to throw a 1-yard touchdown. So he did struggle right away, but he totally recovered. His 27-yard pass to Lazard was just, like I said, a thing of beauty. Bravo. It was a beautiful pass. It was a beautiful catch. And then Manny Wilkins, he did get some playing time, but he went 0 for 3. It's really hard to really say a whole lot about him so far. I don't think his resume should speak too loudly of the last game. The Packers tried to get the ball some more in that fourth quarter, but at that time they were just trying to run out the clock. They didn't want to, risk having incompletions and stopping the clock. So overall, I don't think the offense looked terrible. They did manage to put up 21 points total on the offensive side of the ball. They definitely focused a lot of attention on the run, and if this is a prelude of what's going to happen in the regular season, they had a total of 21 pass attempts and 29 rush attempts, so that the scales have shifted just in that first glimpse of Matt LaFleur's new offense. Now, granted, again, asterisk, there's no Aaron Rodgers, there's no Davante Adams, there's no starters, but if this is any indication, and we saw a lot of benefits of this too, because they ran the ball so much that when they actually would run like a play-action play, you would have wide receivers open, and it was just a matter of can we catch them. And they actually had some really nice screen opportunities too coming off of the ball. So great first showing, I guess you could say. Overall, the receivers, like I said, looked great. Quarterbacks looked good enough. Nothing just jumped off the film for me on the quarterback battle, but That's why we have 3 more preseason games to go. That's why we have 3 more weeks to go of the preseason. And then eventually we will get to, the Bears. We got to talk. I mean, the Bears are the Bears. The Bears. So, defensive highlights. Bravo. I'm going to start off with a little bit of a hand clap for you, defense. So, forced 3 total turnovers. That is an extremely bright highlight for last night's game. And then actually they have a 4th total turnover if you count St. Brown picking up that muffed punt return and recovering it in the end zone. So overall, I mean, if you want to lump the special teams into that group, there were 4 turnovers forced by the Packers. On the actual defensive side of the ball, you had Kadar Holman, who had his first takeaway of the year, first takeaway for the Packers season, picking off Joe Webb halfway through the first quarter. You had safety Raven Green, who is making a strong argument for a roster spot heading into the 2019 season. He stripped away the ball from running back Taywon Jones, and it was recovered by safety Will Redmond. And then finally, cornerback, was it Chadon? We'll go with Chadon Sullivan, had the final defensive turnover of the game. He picked off Joe Webb at the 22-yard line and actually ran it all the way back to the 3-yard line. And that's when the Tim Boyle red zone nightmare ensued. So all is not well, though. I can talk great about turnovers. Forcing turnovers is going to be key. I think when you actually get your starters in there and you can create those amount of turnovers, and who knows what the statistic is, but turnovers, decide the overall victor in the game. And if that's any indication, 4 turnovers for us, only 1 turnover for the Houston Texans. We're the winners, 28-26. So maybe that has something to say for it. But all was not well for the Packers defense. They gave up a total of 412 total yards. They gave up 29 first downs, and of the plays that the Texans ran, they averaged 5.8 yards a play. So you'd really love to see that number go down. Houston was 7 for 12 on third downs, and it seems like they had the ability to just kind of run through that Packers rush defense at will. Obviously, room for improvement. Again, as much as this video is a training ground for my game recaps heading into the regular season, this is just a training ground for the Packers getting better and heading into the 2019 season. Outside the stats, though, tackling, as I've mentioned before, or the lack of tackling, still has me worried. Joe Webb might not be the easiest quarterback to tackle, and he obviously got around quite a bit, but he was looking like Michael Vick in Madden 2007 out there last night. They could not get their hands on him. He was constantly evading some of these defenders and scrambling for first downs. With about 10 minutes to go in the second quarter, it was 3rd and 9 for the Houston Texans. Joe Webb scrambled outright for a 13-yard gain, and there was probably no less than 3 tackles that were missed on his way to getting that first down. So that was very early indications that, boy, they got to get this whole tackling down. And then it came way later in the end of the game, the fourth quarter with about 3:51 left on the clock. It was 4th and 6. Chadon Sullivan comes unblocked, makes full contact with Joe Webb, but before taking him to the ground, he lets up, and then Joe Webb continues to just scramble. The guy probably ran for 50 yards, but he picked up the 8-yard gain necessary for the first down. And however, it was called back. There was what do they call it? Illegal blindside block on Sullivan. So the same guy that missed the tackle had one hell of an acting job at getting called for that illegal blindside block. It was a bad call. Honestly, I have to be unbiased as much as possible. It was a terrible call. He should have just made the sack on Joe Webb. It would have been game over, but he had him in his arms, and then he literally let his hands go back and off the quarterback went. So you got to play through the whistles. It's preached constantly by Matt LaFleur. It's preached constantly by any great head coach that's out there. But that was disappointing. The tackling has to get better. And look, like I said, I understand it's the first preseason game. A lot of these guys will not have active roles on the Packers roster. And after watching, I don't know if you guys caught the first episode of Hard Knocks, they also implement that thud tackling concept. So all the criticism I gave for the Packers defense and Matt LaFleur specifically about the thud tackling and not having full contact, I mean, seeing that Oakland does that just shows that it's not that uncommon in today's NFL. But again, we're comparing the Packers to the Oakland Raiders, who went 4-12 last year. So who knows? Who knows what's right? Who knows what's wrong? There's some of you in the comments that said there should be tackling. There's some of you in the comments that said no, don't do tackling. It's going to cause injuries. I don't know which side I am completely on quite yet, but if the tackling does not improve, I mean, the second last thing that I want to see heading into the 2019 season is the defense missing tackles. Now, the first thing I don't want to see heading during the 2019 season is obviously Aaron Rodgers laying lifeless on the field. But outside of that, missed tackles just kill me, especially when it's third down. And like I said, Houston went 7 for 12 on third downs. Something that definitely needs to get cleaned up. So let's have a drink break. So to recap and sum up last night's game, overall, I would give the team a grade of about a C+. So we got the win. We showed some good things in all three areas, but I would have liked to seen better tackling. I think I've freaking punched that one to death so far in this video. A stronger red zone offense. You can't count on 7 attempts from within the 3-yard line to score a touchdown. And what was really interesting, we finally got to see the implementation. That's not right. We finally got to see the challenge flag come out on a potential pass interference on that particular series, and it became really clear just with that one challenge how the refs are going to look at this heading into the season. And this gives me it causes two things. So the first thing is we're going to see possibly a lot more challenges when it's third down or fourth down and there is a potential pass interference and they want to possibly get the refs to look at it. But on the counter side of that, it's evident that the referees are not going to call pass interference unless it is blatantly clear that there was. They're going to let these guys play. I think that's awesome that they're going to let these guys play. But I really fear that day that the Packers come out on the losing side of one of these challenges, and hope that day never comes. But yeah, the offense needs to get stronger in the red zone. This is something that has been preached throughout training camp. As I said, the Packers, they failed to score in the red zone. The first string offense failed to score in the red zone against the Texans on Tuesday's practice. And this has been a problem area so far in training camp. So I'd like to really see that improve. An even stronger red zone defense would be a lovely thing to see as well, because the Texans, once they got into the red zone, they went 3 for 3 in the red zone, scoring all 3 times. A little more efficiency in that run defense. So like I said earlier, the run game was kind of just going all over the Packers. And again, we don't have either of the Smiths. We don't have Kenny Clark. You had Rashawn Gary in there for a little bit, so you can forgive that one a little bit. And it would have been nice, the final point, it would have been nice if the Packers held on to that 28-10 lead heading into the fourth quarter. They did give up a total of 16 points in the fourth quarter. It was very sloppy. I think everything that you needed to see from the game could have been accomplished in either the first half or the first 3 quarters. But if you're curious how my grading skill works, like I said, I gave these guys a team grade of C+. An A+ on my scale is a 31-0 shutout against the New England Patriots at Foxborough. So that would probably be the penultimate performance that you can get out of the Green Bay Packers. And an F grade that you will see throughout the season, that would be equivalent to losing to the Arizona Cardinals at home in December when you have some playoff implications on the line. I mean, an F rating is almost enough to get your head coach fired. Looking to the future, the Packers return to the practice field on both Saturday and Sunday before having off on Monday and traveling to Baltimore. I will try to post a video on Monday, if not Wednesday morning, with a little bit of a preview heading into the Baltimore Ravens game next Thursday night. As always, subscribe to the video, comment down below. I'm not gonna end all these videos on the same note, so if you like the content, subscribe. If you don't unsubscribe. I've had like 4 or 5 unsubscribes this past week, and it's I don't know what to think of it. If you guys have more YouTube knowledge, let me know how I should think of it. But until next time, when we talk about the Packers and we can look forward to that Baltimore Ravens game, I will see you